Nigel. Thank you so much for joining us today at our first interview for the Black Co-ops Matter interview series. We're so excited to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, would love to hear more about your story, maybe your background, how you came to create pecan milk. So I was hoping that you can start us off with that.
Okay. Um, so I'm Nigel, and especially I come from queer and trans Black uh, brown communities in the South, and the traditions that come with that. For me, I started Pecan Milk Co-op in 2013, especially being inspired by Cooperation Jackson. And my background really is in social justice movement organizing. So since it's been 7 or 8 years, now I have learned so much about, well, managing a startup cooperative. And now I'm pretty interested in finance, especially because as we're able to make finance more inclusive, we might be able to have more cooperatives, more Black cooperatives, and just more Black-owned businesses that can be sustainable. So I'm also an accounting student and a finance minor at Kennesaw State University. And of course, I live in Atlanta. I live just south of Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta.
Amazing. Thank you so much for introducing yourself and giving us a little bit of where you are, especially you're the finance officer for Pecan Milk and the founder. And so hearing more about what you think about cooperatives and a need, especially with finance, that's such a big part of things. And at our firm, we do help with people, cooperatives and nonprofits and helping them raise capital because that is a really, an area where a lot of Black businesses kind of struggle with. And so I can only imagine, especially in the cooperative space. So could you talk a little bit more on maybe the finance aspect of putting together a cooperative? I know you mentioned was it Jackson Cooperative that you were aware of prior?
Cooperation Jackson
Cooperation Jackson.
in
Okay.
Mississippi.
Okay. I haven't heard of that cooperative before. So that's a cooperative, and do you know like what they focus on?
Cooperation Jackson, as I understand, had been especially connected to the Malcolm X grassroots movement, and maybe another Black liberation movement organization. They've been going for a while. They have a space in Jackson and some different land that I understand they own, and they had Freedom Farms. As I understand it, they'd been establishing a hub of multiple cooperatives that they're still establishing down in Jackson.
That's awesome. Wow. So I'm learning something during this interview as well. I had no idea about that movement with Jackson Corporation. Right? Am I saying that right? Um,
Cooperation Jackson.
Cooperation Jackson. Okay, there we go. And so you mentioned I think you didn't really go into detail about your nut milk journey. If you can kind of tell our viewers about how that started, that would be really great too.
Right. So in 2013, I did drop out. I think that is a good point to mention. I did drop out of Georgia State University in the Women, Genders, and Sexuality Institute, the Masons Institute for Social Change. And I found a job as a barista, and I had to move into my friend's basement, bless my friend, for a little bit. And in that time I found after that I found a shared, like a room in a shared house and like called the Lake Claire Land Trust, where it was like not necessarily, I don't think you want to call it like a boarding house, but it had like people were sharing different rooms, like shared housing and on like some small preserved land in East Atlanta.
Oh,
And my roommate had a Vitamix. I borrowed it, and this real story, I made almond milk. I got some almonds from the farmer's market, and I made almond milk in her Vitamix for the first time, and it was just so much better than what I would buy at the store. So I've been vegetarian since, I don't know, so long. Since how long has it been? About 2007.
oh wow.
And in 2013, so 8 years ago, I became vegan too. And so I mean, I was like a barista, a college, like not even a student, but a dropout. And I made my own almond milk, and I knew like I would pay more. I would love to pay more for really good
Yeah.
almond milk with all the almonds in it at the store. But instead, I'm getting, this stuff that's got very little real almonds, and I'll be sickening additives, added vitamins.
Not
It
fresh.
doesn't taste like anything.
Yeah.
Right. It's not fresh. Instead, they like pasteurize it to death to the extent that it can sit on the shelf. Like
You
that it
don't
can be
even think
shelf
about
stable.
it. Yeah, you don't even think about it when you're buying. I know I don't. I like to buy almond milk as well, and I don't really think about, okay, this is just there and it expires like months from now if I don't open it. Like that's kind of weird to think about.
Yeah, it's just a really intense pasteurization process. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot of pieces to it. So I mean, so that's what I realized that it was really delicious. So I started to bike, so I started to bike almond milk to my friends' houses. I texted my homies, and I was like, I'll bicycle like a pint of almond milk for $5.
I love it.
And some of my people were like, stop texting me. And some people were like, okay, they did it. And I feel like I was able to pay like the Comcast bill or the light bill or something. And I was like, okay. And I kept going, trying to make it a real business. And that is really also where the finance comes in, because my first job, well, not my first job, but that first job as a barista, I was like saving my checks, my paychecks to pay the rent and putting my tips away to invest in this business. And it's like 8 years later, I realized that it takes a lot of money to
Right.
finance a products-based business. And I think that what I've heard is that that's why there's not as many Black-owned products-based businesses. That, for instance, like my mom's an attorney or my therapist is a Black woman. Some of these service-based businesses.
Right.
But then when it comes to having a product-based business, you've got to have facilities, inventory, a team that you've got to pay to turn the inventory into products. You really have to have more than that. I mean, the marketing, there's different pieces, and then so it's expensive
Right.
to finance a product-based business, and I got the Pecan Milk into the largest health food co-op in the Southeast, 700 Natural Foods Market Cooperative, and we were really selling. We were sampling. People were buying it. They put the milk at the top of the shelf, on top of all the other milks, real local. And the issue was, I didn't get paid for a while, and I went to ask the manager, kind of complained, like, we haven't gotten paid. What's going on? And
Yeah.
she said, well, has it been 30 days yet? And that's when I learned that most grocery stores are not going to pay us for our products until 30 days after we deliver it. So
Oh,
it's like, we're not even getting paid the cash to go re-up we just have to have cash and inventory on deck in
Right.
order to go forward. So it requires real financing it. And the real truth is that, yeah, I have had that experience where we were really selling. Everyone thinks we're doing really well, and on the background, we're not getting any money. We don't have any money. We're waiting to get paid. And so it's like very important that we're having more than enough money to like manage over some time. So yeah, the finance piece is I think it's definitely a major obstacle, and there are solutions. I'll say, I think people are saying now that folks are trying to find more solutions for Black-owned businesses to get that financing. I would say, and I will say too that, in our sector, in the co-op sector, we've got groups like the New England Co-op Loan Fund, Shared Capital Cooperative, Seed Commons, the network of almost 30 loan funds for co-ops, the National Cooperative Bank. Well, those resources do exist, and folks are getting financed through those institutions, and they exist to support our cooperatives. And I think I hear folks saying that they want to have more equity in the financing of all of the different cooperatives, especially I want to speak up for Black-owned cooperatives in the South.
Okay.
Like I'm not the only one. And like I said, like in order to function, we're needing the financing.
You need
But I'll just say real quick, I think that the access to capital, and a lot of folks also are not wanting to take on the debt or equity financing that have to repay. Grants are really important, I think, a way for us to fund our co-ops, which is untraditional for a for-profit business. But a lot of Black-owned businesses are not willing to take on the debt. And when we read Dr. Jessica Gorton Nimhard's book, Collective Courage, The History of African-American Cooperative Economics, we do realize that historically a lot of our businesses, of course, have had to take on extra debt and have more people have own equity in our businesses to get access to financing, even as we're still struggling to get access to that financing.
Right.
So we got to fight for our money. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've been doing it, and it might have been a little bumpy along the way, but you were able to figure it out. I know the financing piece for cooperatives and just Black businesses in general is really tough, but especially with cooperatives, getting some sort of loans and different things. And like you said, a lot of people don't want to have to take out that debt. But I'm sure lack of knowledge with navigating like a venture capital space or raising funds, anything, it's confusing, can also be intimidating if you don't have, people that are knowledgeable about these different topics and can kind of guide you along the way. So did you have any resources? Were there other cooperatives that you were able to lean on to kind of get guidance from?
It is pretty difficult. I think, I would say that for us, something that really sticks out for me is that it's hard to find like another Black-owned worker cooperative in the South that is like, we can really call on, to be like, how do y'all do this? A lot of times we'll talk to Latin American cooperatives, Spanish-speaking co-ops, and white cooperatives, and we've talked to Mandela Grocery, the Black-owned grocery store in Oakland, California.
Okay.
But and I think that the reason why it's so valuable to talk to folks that maybe aren't in where we can talk to that are more. I'm gonna say I think that sometimes it's very valuable to also definitely talk to like white co-ops in like Vermont and like see how they do stuff, but they're not really having the same experience we're having.
Right.
Like for us, we're not able to have our team members put in equity into the business to start it. A lot of cooperatives have their team members put in the cash as
Yeah.
equity to start their business. Our team members don't have that cash, so we're having to find other ways to get the cash, and also find ways for our team members to put something in to live out that international cooperative principle of member economic participation that really binds someone into the business.
Why do you
Um,
think there's
this,
not many like Black cooperatives that you can go to, or a strong Black cooperative community created that you can lean on, reach out to for advice and guidance, kind of see where they are in their journey to cooperative success? Do you have any ideas?
it seems like there are simply not a lot of Black-owned worker co-ops
Well,
or Southern worker co-ops.
what made you specifically choose a worker co-op? Because there are different types of co-ops. Obviously, it sounds you read the Collective Courage, like seem like you're very knowledgeable in cooperative space. What drew you to the worker co-op space
My values as a social justice movement organizer, um, is one thing that makes me want to try to do businesses that are treating the workers better, a democratic workplace that's not exploiting workers, and by having a team that was willing to put in some work, put in some type of equity in the earlier stages, that had helped because I didn't have the money to like pay folks to do the work.
Right.
And also, I have worked in a lot of food service jobs. I've washed dishes. I've been a barista. I've been a lot of delivering a lot of food. I've done a lot of different stuff like that. I worked at concession stands for nachos and pizzas and beer at stadiums. I've done different. I've done different food. I've served different food service work,
Thank you for your
and
service.
of course, of course. And so I always felt as though the workers could it always felt the workers could run the business, and the managers and the owners were just there to tell us what to do and get all the money. And so, yeah, I feel as though it's true. Looking into it, it's like as we were able to grow our business and not hire managers and not have an owner taking all the money out of it,
Right.
I think we're able to run our own. The food service workers are able to own and run and manage the business.
It's definitely a more empowering structure instead of like the general hierarchical, structure where you have the manager who oversees, then you give the workers a voice and a say in management and how, the day-to-day operations are running and different aspects like that. So I could see how it's definitely appealing, especially with your background and what you want to accomplish. Um, that makes a lot of sense too. Did you so you did say like it seemed like some of your worker members were able to put in some sort of funding and then you were trying to seek out. So like for instance, when you're in this situation with the grocery store and you're not going to get your pay until 30 days later, like how were you offsetting those costs? Did you end up finding any investors?
Yes, we especially have benefited the most from local community development finance institutions, especially that focus on Black-owned businesses, more
Okay.
so than the co-op sector. I think the co-op sector, I would say the bigger groups that focus on funding co-ops, it feels like they're needing a bigger functional co-op. And I want to say, even as like developing a co-op is very difficult. Like we have to figure out how to navigate the co-op systems ourselves because we have to do it in a way that makes sense for us. at the same time you're hearing about the struggles of financing, and that's not even to talk about like for being in the commercial kitchen making pecan milk and delivering it and marketing it, all the things. So we did get an equity investment from the Shared Capital Co-op that helped some, and we got another equity investment from the Village Micro Fund that's helped some. We're working. We started a direct public offering.
Okay.
We started off as an LLC partnership. Last year we got a grant from the Sustainable Economies Law Center to start a corporation, to get a grant to start to pay a lawyer to start a corporation that can accept. Thank you. That can accept investment, so people can invest, and then later we'll promise them a dividend back. Yeah, and so for us, it's definitely a mix of like loans and grants and this equity financing. Our team members have mostly just been able to put in sweat equity, like work, more so than cash.
Okay.
So we've used a different mix of ways to find financing. Yeah.
So you did mention you were able to get an attorney through this grant through the SALC. So how important is it for you to have Black legal representation?
I know that Tia Evans helped us work on our operating agreement in 2017 through Carolina Common Enterprise alongside attorney Thomas Beckett. So it has felt good to like have a Black woman that can help us like through some of these different processes. I know there was an attorney, Clark Arrington, in Philadelphia, who helped start the public offering for Equal Exchange Cooperative, and he recommended the attorney that we did go with in St. Louis. So a lot of times we're finding that like we are having to definitely still reach out to white folks and like listen to what everyone has to say. But also even with the accountant, knowing Mabry Davis, the certified public accountant in Richmond, it feels good that to have some of our folks that are in the process. Feels like also there's more possibility for more of our folks to be part of it since there's already some of our people that are already there.
Right. That makes sense. And then do you feel like there are any common misconceptions with being a worker co-op or starting a co-op? You know, you're starting a business. So were there anything that you think that you maybe wish you knew going into it that you didn't know? Besides, I guess, obviously the finance piece, maybe? Or were you already aware?
For us, we have kind of built more of our structure. I think it's been really important to be members of the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives and the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, and to really listen to what other people have already done. But with that, we've definitely we do some things differently. Like we don't have a board of directors. It's like there's the temporary owners that are just joining the co-op, and when you're voted in, you're just a permanent owner, and that's the highest. There's no board of directors, there's no managers. We're having to do every process that we have. We get it, and then we have to make it our own. Even with our values, I'm recently realizing that we love the international cooperative values. We appreciate having a platform that is over a century old that co-ops are using around the world. And we're realizing that the co-op values were made for people in a different context. So for instance, we use the voluntary and open membership principle, even at the same time as our mission, it's create a dignified democratic workplace for marginalized communities in the South. So what I mean by that is we're not discriminating against people based off of like race or sexual orientation or gender. At the same time that we're explicitly valuing creating we're explicitly valuing creating dignified work in our marginalized communities in the South. And when they made those international cooperative principles in England in the 1800s, they were not in that context. They probably didn't have us in mind. And we have additional values, and I think that that's also, a lot of them have been unnamed. A lot of them have been, we have shared values, especially as we're in a shared queer and trans, Black and brown community in Atlanta in the South. And just, we have additional values that we haven't really named yet.
Okay.
And then we wonder if it's safe to name all of our values. Also.
So why do you say that? Do you think that you're wondering if it's safe to name all of your values? Do you feel as though you might like receive backlash for it or something? Because it's not like
Yes, that's right.
the set values that are used internationally for cooperatives, or backlash from who?
Okay, I mean, our values, I think that our values are definitely on a spiritual level. I think that like none of us is like in a really strict religious, but all of us can appreciate that like we're watched over by our ancestors. Our business is watched over by our ancestors, and that there are like metaphysical consciousnesses. I think that's something that we agree to, the power of like speaking stuff into existence and our intention. We believe in karma. We don't we try not to do screwed up stuff. We try to not only keep our relationships well over years, which has been really helpful, but we also, when it's been like, we've seen our competitors cut corners when we've had to do it the hard way. And, I said, let's go snitch on them. Let's tell the Department of Agriculture they're not in compliance. And, my team members will say like, well, no, because the karma is going to come back at us. And it's like, do many business owners, all business owners think about the energy coming back in that way? And then we have political values. And that's what I mean is that historically, Black-owned cooperatives certainly have experienced a lot of backlash. And while we don't hear a lot about that now, we also don't have a lot of Black-owned cooperatives. I mean, white supremacist violence is still here.
And you're in
and when we talk, and we're in the South,
yeah.
When we talk about the different values we have, I think they'll be feminist, values. Our values are like about the economy we live in. We're talking about dignified work. Most of us are descendants of people that have been enslaved. And so we do have a shared politic and shared values. And it seems like most prudent to focus on pecan milk, selling pecan milk more than it does to, blast out our political values with our fists in the air and a megaphone.
So do you think that that's something that would change over time, where maybe the Black community, so do you think you find support from the Black community with, not even necessarily, I know the Black cooperative community is very small, but how do you think in the larger scheme of things, has the Black community been very supportive? How does that look for Pecan Milk?
Yeah, I think, we definitely value being in the Black community, and definitely a lot of our folks have supported us and been in our market. I think that when it comes to, we're in Atlanta, and so there's a lot of Black-owned vegan businesses. And I would say I wish that earlier on we had been able to that more Black-owned businesses were willing to build more partnerships with us. It feels like, I think that we would be a lot more strong if more of our businesses. Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that. I must have lost connection. The new digital age that we live in, trying to navigate. I cut out
Right.
right when answering the question about how the Black community has supported you and what that looks like.
So we appreciate being a part of Black communities, and we have gotten some support, and of course, a lot of like Afro-descendant people are conscious of their health, which is our target market. At the same time, I do wish that, especially being in Atlanta, where there are so many Black-owned businesses and Black-owned vegan businesses, I do wish that we did have more partnerships with other businesses earlier on. It feels like when we are more successful, that more Black-owned businesses will want to partner with us, and it feels like Black communities are not homogenous, and maybe we've struggled to build relationships with a lot of the Black vegan businesses in Atlanta. And that sits with me because I think a lot of other communities, it feels like in the United States will like work together, like ethnic communities will work together, and there can be in a stronger place because of it, just on the basis of who they are. And it feels like even though we are, even as I am like a Black person in a physical Black community like the West End in Atlanta, with other Black-owned vegan businesses, we might find more support at first in other neighborhoods from other people, and that's kind of the work we're having to do. I think we would be stronger if we had gotten more of the support from the many Black-owned vegan businesses that I had approached earlier.
That's unfortunate, and I feel like we see that so often in Black business in general. And it seems like you're mentioning, it isn't until you're more established in pecan milk, and then you're able to create all of these great partnerships, which could have really made your transition and journey maybe a lot smoother, or you see certain successes sooner if you were able to get that assistance from the jump. Is that something that you think pecan milk would be or already are doing for other maybe upcoming, whether they're cooperatives or just Black-owned businesses in general that are pushing more like vegan or vegetarian, different things like that?
So I think that it would be really important for Black-owned cooperatives to exercise our principle of cooperation among cooperatives, especially as we are sharing a lot of problems. A lot of the problems are systemic. These same CDFIs, community development finance institutions that want to finance Black-owned cooperatives, it's us. It's us that they want to talk to. So I would say that I'm interested in being a part of a deliberate network of Black-owned cooperatives that shares technical assistance, shares best practices, some of the systemic issues and works with them together on. When it comes to like a broader community, I think for us, like with our international cooperative principle of education, training, and information, we'll want to share with our folks how to run their business, how to run a cooperative business based on all we've learned. That's something we are focusing on, especially because when we bring in new members, they need to become enculturated to our business's culture, and we want to. So I think maybe sharing more about how co-op runs and how our business runs can support more African American entrepreneurs. Yeah, I'm not sure. I would love to see more of our businesses supporting each other earlier from the beginning, just off the basis of who we are.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of obstacles in the way of that.
Right. And especially it's like the, shared struggle that you mentioned. And then it's like, okay, so you've made it to this space in your business. And then, it's like making sure you're opening those doors behind you and like pulling each other up, just as, other communities do all the time. We need to kind of get in that space. And I think what I've noticed with there's been, a Black business movement more so, I think, now, and where people are trying to support Black businesses amongst our own community, which is, I think, something that has been lacking. So do you see a shift in that kind of the sense of supporting Black business? I know you mentioned from your like the infancy of pecan milk not getting that support, but especially now with the times that we're in, do you see a shift in that?
I believe that we have to keep pushing, and that we're gonna keep pushing, and that it feels as though there's different obstacles that I had 7 years ago that are easier now. For instance, like access to a shared commercial kitchen. Back then, it was very difficult and expensive, and now there's multiple shared commercial kitchens, especially for anti-gentrification and Black-owned, people of color and women-owned businesses. I think that we do have to keep pushing until we get it, until our businesses are funded and broke even and all the things.
Mhm.
Yeah, just because.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
I feel like I want to really. Excuse me.
I was just gonna say, yeah, no, there's definitely still a lot of work to be done for sure.
Right. Yeah. I think that while they say that they're like ready to finance our businesses and all that, I would say that people's businesses still need to respond to a legitimate market need. That our businesses, unless you're focusing on like cosmetics for African Americans or like medicine like that specifically, I think that our businesses our target market. A lot of times, I think you might want to make them like Black people, and they don't need to be so limited. And a lot of times, ooh,
You look like you just thought of something good. You're about to drop some good wisdom
well,
on us.
no, it's kind of forgot. Yeah,
It's okay. I get what you were saying though, and I could see like, making sure that we're branching out, not just focusing on Black business. Obviously, that's what we need to, continue with our community and everything, but not limiting ourselves to just that Black business support, and also getting support from other people, not targeting, solely Black people, but opening that so that, that opens our success as well, visibility, all of the things. So I get what you mean with that. And then kind of this is just like my last question for you. is why do you think Black co-ops matter, and what does that phrase mean to you?
So Black-owned businesses matter because, like, especially because, you know, our ideas need to be like get out there in our like world and our society and economy. A lot of our needs are met from businesses. So if there's not Black-owned businesses, Black Black people are not out there being able to like put our ideas out into the world and meet some of the needs of our communities. Co-ops matter because they can create a model that's just so much more sustainable for the workers, and especially that cares about communities that the businesses are in. Yeah, and then as we're developing a K-shaped economy, which just means the rich are still getting richer and the poor are still getting poorer exponentially, we're needing ways to like intervene economically in our communities, you know, pretty urgently. Black co-ops, Black co-ops, there's different types of Black co-ops, and they're important especially for wealth building. As people that had wealthy societies with natural resources and lots of land that was taken from us, and for us to be placed here in a country where over 90% of the land is owned by white people. You know, a lot for like we're needing to build wealth. And so Black-owned credit unions like Atlanta Credit Union of Atlanta helps build and maintain wealth and can provide easier loans for our folks. Farms especially are important for Black co-ops. The Federation of Southern Co-ops or the West Georgia Farmers Co-op helps people preserve the land that they have. It also can create more food sovereignty by making sure we continue to know how and are actually growing food. I'd say Black worker co-ops are pretty salient, pretty important, because as people that have been enslaved, where all of our labor for all of our lives have been owned by other people, we are needing an intervention in order to have our communities be able to own our own labor. Labor is such a spiritual thing. It's how you manifest in the world every single day. It's your body is doing a specific work, your mind is applied to it, and labor generates wealth. And so Black worker co-ops especially matter because we're in a time when after slavery, okay, this comes from Kali Akuno as well. I mean, many people have talked about this, but Kali Akuno from Cooperation Jackson in their book Jackson Rising, especially talks about how Black communities have become superfluous or unnecessary for capitalism after slavery, and they've been working on what to do with us through Jim Crow and convict leasing and all these things. Now, in mass, millions of people are enslaved or are imprisoned in the United States. Are warehoused, as Angela Davis would say, in the United States, in prisons. And we have the school to prison pipeline. Another place that Black folks are primarily in is the service economy. We're the ones that are having to use our bodies to continue serving the same people that developed the white supremacist slave economy, that we're still needing to heal from. So in order to escape the service, like endless labor in the service economy and that's underpaid, that just drains people's energy, we are needing to own our labor and be able to decide how to use our labor together, be in control of the profit, the income that comes into our labor, be able to manage the business so we can generate more profit or do what's necessary for our own labor. It's imperative that we are able to make our own spaces for our labor and the economy, or else we are often looking at alternatives in a capitalist economy that really doesn't have room for us.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. This interview has been so insightful, and honestly, you're an inspiration. I admire all the work that you've been doing, not just for Pecan Milk and for yourself, but creating a safe space for marginalized groups, and also just being an advocate for us and making sure that we're getting into these different spaces, and wanting to share your experience with other people, and other people who are interested and potentially creating a cooperative, and are able to maybe even connect with you or listen to this interview and get some insight on your journey, your process to where you are today and where you want to go. And with Black co-ops, and making sure that we're bringing awareness to the Black co-op movement, because there's definitely a Black co-op movement going on right now as well, Black business, everything. And so this has been such an insightful interview, and I'm so appreciative that I was able to speak with you today and kind of learn a little bit more about your story and how Pecan Milk came to be.